I'm going to read more of that Ancient Mysteries and Modern Masonry. This one I'm just going to go ahead and read from the book. I've been starting off with reading a little bit of other stuff, talking about a little bit of other things, but I'll do that with the next video. But, you know, I just want to get through this book, and said if you guys want to look it up and purchase it, that's a good start for researching these things yourself and everything. But about almost halfway through it, the Druidical, Gothic, Grecian, and Jewish mysteries. I was reading about, how he's saying that the Freemasonry is derived from the mystery schools, and that's no shocker, because we also have Albert Pike and Manly P. Hall and all the others. Swinburne climbers say that too. So we know, and that they're also a part of the New World Order. So here's Lecture 3, the Druidical, Gothic, Grecian, and Jewish Mysteries. We are to continue in this lecture our examination of the mysteries of antiquity. We will consider first the Druidical mysteries. The Druidical mysteries were the same as the Celtic and were celebrated in many countries. We are told by Caesar that these mysteries were better understood in Britain than anywhere else. All temples in whatever country had places of initiation connected with them, and they were usually subterranean. The Great Grotto at Castleton in Derbyshire bears evidence that the celebration of the Druidical mysteries was an elaborate nature. The temple at Avebury was also a stupendous structure and was built in the form of a circle. The periods of initiation were quarterly and were held at the time of the equinoxes and solstices. There were 3 degrees in the Druidical mysteries: Ubates, Bards, and Druids, and it was obligatory that the candidate for initiation be well qualified and duly prepared, mental and moral perfection being the first requisite. When the candidate had passed the probationary stage, he was clad in a robe, stripped with white, blue, and green, emblematical of light, truth, and hope, confined in a cromlech tomb for parts of 3 days without food, dead in the language of the mysteries, after which he was liberated for initiation and restored to life on the 3rd day. Because that goes back to Christ, right? And that's what these guys, think happens with this initiation. They become Christ-like. They become Christed. They attain the Godhead. They attain to Godhood. This confinement preceded his initiation into each of the first 2 degrees. The 2 first degrees. When the aspirant was liberated, he was placed in the hands of an officer and conducted around the sanctuary 9 times. At first with slow and measured step, which at length was increased to a rapid pace. During the circuits, there was a clang of musical instruments and recitations in praise of those who were heroic in war, courteous in peace, and the friends of religion. At the completion of this ceremony, the oath of secrecy was administered, and the aspirant then went through various ceremonies in which he represented many characters, declaring, among other things, "I have died, and I have revived," alluding to his mystical death and resurrection. In the second part of the ceremony, there was the dismal darkness, the dire shrieks, the barking dogs, etc., with which we have made familiar in the preceding mysteries. The aspirant finally emerged from the gloom, found himself surrounded with the most brilliant coruscations of light, being then presented to the archdruid, who instructed him in the mysteries, imparting the knowledge of Druidism, and exhorting him to the practice of virtue. There was still another degree to be administered to those who aspired to a high degree of perfection. To obtain this further advancement, they were subjected to the most arduous purification and were committed to the tomb for 9 months. where in solitude they studied theology, philosophy, cosmogony, astronomy, etc. Dr. Oliver says this was, quote, the death and burial of the mysteries, and on its expiration he was said to be newly born from the womb of Caridwen, and was pronounced a regenerate person, cleansed from his former impurities by the mystical contents of her cauldron, unquote. When the period of gestation in the womb of Caridwen was complete, as the confinement in the tomb was termed, the candidate was ready for further instruction. Another trial, however, must be braved before the highest degree of light could be conferred. The candidate, now called the newborn infant, was placed in a boat and committed to the mercy of the waves. If he succeeded in securing a safe landing place, he was triumphantly received, and this completion of the three degrees made the aspirant a thrice born, conferring upon him the power of inspiration and prophecy in the highest form. The Druids maintained a high intellectual standard, for they taught their disciples astronomy, botany, anatomy, languages, and medicine, etc. Thus we see the mysteries were always repositories of wisdom. The Gothic Mysteries. The Gothic Mysteries were practiced at one time by all the northern nations of Europe. We trace their introduction to Sig, a Scythian prince who lived in the 1st century BC. There were three great festivals connected with the Gothic Mysteries. The most significant was celebrated at the winter solstice and dedicated to Thor. The next celebration was dedicated to Freya and commenced at the second moon in the new year. The third was dedicated to Odin and was held in the spring. These were the principal celebrations, but initiations were also performed at many smaller festivals held during the year. The Palace of Thor, the principal place of initiations, contained 540 halls and was situated in the kingdom of Thurwanger. The Gothic mysteries, like all others, were connected with the mystery myth, differing only in detail. The Gothic version runs as follows. Balder, who was esteemed as invulnerable, had in the general assembly placed himself in sport as a mark at which the gods exercised their skill in casting darts. Odin and Frigga exacted an oath of safety in favor of Balder from everything in nature except the mistletoe, which was omitted on account of its weakness. Loki discovered the exception, placed a sprig in the hands of the blind Hodder, and persuaded him to cast it at Balder, who fell pierced through with mortal wounds. His body was then placed in a boat, set afloat on the water, while the gods mourned for his decease. The fable of Balder and Loki, says Dr. Oliver, with the lamentations of the gods for the death of Balder, bears such an obvious relation to those of Osiris and Typhon, Bacchus and the Titans, Kama, Iswara, etc., that I entertain no doubt but that it constituted the legend of initiation, as it is indeed the exact counterpart of all other systems of mysterious celebration. It would be needless repetition to go into detail regarding these initiations. Suffice it to say that after the candidate was duly prepared by the usual fasting and the preliminary ceremonies of sacrifice, processions, etc., he was conducted with naked feet into the sacred hall and through a winding pathway amid shades of darkness and the howling of dogs to the tomb of the prophetess Volva. Here occurred the mysterious rites of invocation. Passing onward, the candidate bears the bewailings for the death of the god Balder. He was then confined in the pastos or tomb and guarded by Heimdall, the doorkeeper of the gods. Upon liberation, he was instructed to search for the body of Balder and to endeavor to raise him from death to life. Before starting on his dangerous expedition, he was recommended to the protection of the gods. The guide then conducted him through 9 subterranean passages. So you have the number 9 again. Where various experiments of awe and terror awaited him. Completing his journey, he entered the illuminated sacellum and found Balder enthroned on his seat of highest distinction. His entrance was greeted with an anthem of congratulation, and great rejoicing took place for the resuscitation of the god. The candidate then took a solemn oath on the naked sword, a symbol of the supreme god. Throughout the ceremonies, the candidate had been impersonating Balder, that is, his experiences were the same as Balder's, who as a perfect initiate as the type or first fruits of human evolution. The candidate had then attained the balder state of manhood. Take a drink here real quick. The mysteries were introduced into Greece by Orpheus. This great teacher evidently led one of the waves of immigration of the Aryan stock into Europe. The Orphic tradition, and moving on to the Grecian mysteries. Now it's the section now. Anyways, the Orphic tradition had various fortunes. In the days of Homer, it was neglected, for the people were too proud to listen to what they regarded as the superstition of their forefathers. But with the rise of philosophy in the 7th century BC, the earlier religious myths were again examined, and it became evident that ancient Greece possessed a mystery tradition which compared favorably with that of other nations. We do not know exactly the time when the mystery institutions were established, but we do know that they existed under various names: Eleusinian, Bacchic, Dionysiac, Samothracian, etc., and that all were practically the same. The Eleusinian, or Eleusinian, it's the Eleusinian mysteries, or mysteries of Eleusis. Always pronouncing that wrong. But it's Eleusinian. So, and Bacchic, that's Bacchus. And Dionysiac, that is Dionysus, the Greek god Dionysus. Which I think that was the name of one of those lead bands in that Pizzagate scandal that was playing at the Comet Ping Pong Pizza. Figured. Errington D. Dionysus, or what, I think it's close. I think I got his name pretty close, but anyways, the Eleusinian were perhaps the most noted, as they constituted what might be called the state mysteries. In these there were two divisions, the lesser and the greater, beyond which was the true mystery of the path. The center of the work of the lesser mysteries was at Agrae, the greater at Eleusis. The lesser mysteries dealt principally with Hades, or the astral world, the greater with the mental or heavenly world. The ceremonial garment in the lesser mysteries was a fawn skin, in the greater mysteries a golden fleece. The candidates for initiation were naturally divided into two classes: those who were only capable of receiving instruction in the things pertaining to the unseen, and those who were capable of special training in the development of clairvoyance. Instructions was also given in cosmology, anthropogenesis, etc. The Eleusinian mysteries were celebrated with much pomp and lasted 9 days. There's that number 9 again. The places of initiation, like those of other nations, were great subterranean caverns containing many chambers and sepulchres, in which the candidate was immured during a part of the ceremonial rite. Some of these places of initiation, with their tomb cut into the solid rock, are described at length by Mr. Mondro. Every temple had a cavern connected with it for initiation. In some countries, the place of initiation was a pyramid erected over a subterranean cavern. The first portion of the ceremony among the Greeks was the purification by water. The candidate was then conducted to the vestibule and invested with the sacred robes, and after being exhorted to courage, the aspirant was led through a series of caverns where he met with practically the same experiences as we have found in the other mysteries: the dark and gloomy surroundings, the pealing thunder, the howling dogs and wild beasts, the flashes of vivid light, monstrous appearances, etc. After 3 days of these terrors, he was confined in a cell for reflection. Dr. Oliver says, quote, "This was the symbolical death of the mysteries, and the deliverance from confinement was the act of regeneration or new birth, and hence the rejuvenated aspirant was termed twice born, once from the womb of his natural mother, and again from the pastos of initiation, unquote. This deliverance was rather a resurrection than a new birth, the latter applying more properly to the first stage of initiation, although in one sense every stage that marks an extension of consciousness is a new birth. While the aspirant was undergoing the mystical death of Bacchus, the initiates acted out the myth. We have seen that this passion vision was a part of every mystery drama. The neophyte here experienced the great passion himself. This feeling was a prerequisite to knowing. What it was, we do not know, but it had to do with the mystic death of the Master. During this part of the drama, there were loud lamentations over the death of their god, and Rhea, like Isis, went in search of his remains. At a given signal from the Hierophant, the mourning was turned into joy, for it was announced that the body had been found and restored to life. The candidate was liberated from his confinement, and after various experiences in the infernal regions, gained the verdant plains of Elysium, where the souls of the just were observed in the enjoyment of pure delights. Elysium is about the best I pronounce that, but I think you guys already know what that is. Elysium, so Elysium. Here the Hierophant delivered a lecture on the purpose of the mysteries, gave the usual instruction in the secret science, and bestowed the insignia of the order. Clement says of the Greek mysteries, quote, "After these are the minor mysteries, which have some foundation of instruction and a preliminary preparation for what is to come after, and the great mysteries in which nothing remains to be learned of the universe, but only to contemplate and comprehend nature and things," unquote. The Bacchic or Dionysiac mysteries grew to be mere festivals toward the last, and Bacchus himself regarded as the god of wine instead of the manifestation of the Logos. The mysteries of Greece and Rome shared the same decadence as the nations. We cannot judge them by their relics any more than we can judge the grandeur of Rome by the period of her decay. Besides the public mysteries, there were the ancient schools of philosophy of Pythagoras and Plato, which have sometimes been called the private or philosophic mysteries. The founders of these schools were initiates. Pythagoras is said to have been initiated into the Egyptian, Chaldean, Orphic, Eleusinian mysteries. These schools of philosophy worked in connection with the mystery teaching. It is a mistake to suppose that Pythagoras and Plato formulated a new doctrine, for their philosophy was part and parcel of the old wisdom which had been handed down by the Hierophants through the mysteries. The genius of these great teachers consisted in clothing the great truths enshrined in the ancient myths in modes of thought suitable to the time. In the Pythagorean school, the students were divided into 3 degrees or classes. The followers of Pythagoras were noted for purity of life and loftiness of aim and purpose, and the higher religious life of Greece is to be sought in this connection. There were also Orphic communities which deserve mention. The members of these communities were known as Orphics and were said to live the Orphic life, a life of holiness. It was with these communities that the Pythagoreans took refuge when their school at Crotona was broken up. The Jewish mysteries. The ancient Jews had their mysteries, and before I start here, I just want to start and say that this doesn't represent everything that I personally believe. I am reading this to gain a better understanding of what the Illuminati of our day believe, and what they teach, and what they so what they believe about all this stuff. So it's not really my beliefs on their take on Judaism and Christianity is not the same as what I think of it. So I'm open-minded to things, but just letting you know that when they're saying that Judaism and Christianity come from the mysteries, that's not me saying it, obviously. Just letting you know. In case there is somebody who happens to stumble upon this who happens to be a Christian, I'm not necessarily knocking on what they believe and stuff and joining their side, whatever. Okay, so the Jewish mysteries. The ancient Jews had their mysteries as well as all other peoples of antiquity. Mr. Alb, in his book Future Life, page 107, says that it appears to be an established fact that the Israelites had their mysteries as well as the Egyptians and the majority of ancient races. Although they had these secrets, occult knowledge and Kabbalistic teaching, which passed from mouth to ear for generations among the Jewish priests, as did the Brahminical teaching before it was reduced to writing, yet we do not find the Jewish rites as elaborate as those practiced by other nations. The Jewish Kabbalistic doctrines were not written down until the 1st century of our era. Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Rabbi Simeon ben Joka, compiled the Kabbalistic teaching of his father into a work called the Zohar. But these teachings did not originate with that noted rabbi. They reached far into remote antiquity. This book, which was edited between 70 and 100 AD, interesting time that's placed there, 70, because it was 70 AD that Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans, and they lost their temple and everything. So this book, which was edited between 70 and 100 AD, was lost, and its sacred contents were preserved only in a number of scattered manuscripts. The Zohar was rewritten, according to Monk, by Moses de Leon. De Leon, that's D-E-L-E-O-N. So D-E-L-E-O-N. Moses de Leon in the 13th century, and was based upon those fragmentary manuscripts and ancient doctrines which have been partially destroyed or lost to the general world. The Sefer Yetzirah, or Jewish Book of Creation, is first mentioned in the 10th century, although its contents are very ancient. These two books, the Zohar and Yetzirah, are the storehouse of all subsequent Kabbalistic works. The Kabbalistic writings, then, are comparatively modern, but their doctrines came to the Jews from the Chaldeans and Egyptians. So there you go with that. So we do have a Mason agreeing that the Jewish Kabbalah, the Jews didn't come up with that. So Moses was an initiate and knew the primitive universal mystery language, also the numerical system on which it was based. And that can be verified by the Old Testament when it said that Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians. Let's go look that up. It's like in Exodus, whatever. But that shows that Moses, at least during that period of time, or before he let his people out of Egypt, or whatever, well, had to have been an initiate. Had to have been somewhat a part of it, to some degree. So anyways, his writings have not come down to us. The books attributed to him are not the original Mosaic records. The early Hebrew teachings derived from Moses had various fortunes. The original scrolls were probably lost and rewritten many times before the days of Ezra, and when the Jews were carried away into captivity. The Jewish scriptures were destroyed. Ezra endeavored to restore them as best he could, but they have been tampered with even since his day. The Samaritans repudiate the Jewish canonical books. They are disfigured, they say, beyond all recognition by the Talmudists. They have their books of Moses, differing materially, yet claimed by the Samaritans to be carefully copied from the original. The black Jews of southern India knew nothing of the captivity, thus proving that they emigrated previous to 600 BC. They also have a book of Moses, which differs greatly from either of the above canonical books. Although the Jews are right in declaring that Moses originally gave them their cosmology and laws, still the records of these laws have been so changed that the present books attributed to him are not the original books at all. Some fragments of the earlier writings and traditions may have been available at the time of Ezra, but in all probability the main allegories were taken from the symbolical records of the Chaldeans, as the earlier allegories have been adopted from similar records in Egypt. The doctrine of the Kabbalah is practically the same as that of the ancient universal teaching. Ein Sof, which is their God, which means light, the endless light, is the Western and Semitic para-Brahman. Between the absolute Ein Sof and the heavenly man, there is an impersonal first cause. Okay. Dr. Ginsburg says, quote, "For to reveal itself to us, the concealed of all the concealed, set forth the 10 emanations, Sephiroth, called the form of God, form of the heavenly man. Yet since even this luminous form was too dazzling for our vision, it had to be put on another garment, which is the universe. The universe, therefore, or the visible world, is a further expression of the divine substance and is called in the Kabbalah the garment of God. This is the doctrine of the Vishnu Purana, and in fact of all the schools. But it is not my purpose here to expound the teaching of the mystery, so we must forego further comment." Huh. So, I'm going to quit it right there. Got pretty well into it for this 20-something minutes. But anyways, yeah, so, yeah, when these mystery school guys are talking about the Abrahamic religions being descended from them, I'm not saying whether they're right or wrong. I'm just saying that that's their opinion, and that's what they say. I'm not saying that. So I did, however, do a couple videos, showing with some of my older stuff that when they're taking certain verses out of the Bible and applying them and saying that, well, Jesus talked about mysteries, and Paul talked about mysteries. Paul talked about the Christ within. I showed what Paul was talking about, and that it was some evidence that it wasn't the mystic Christ that the Theosophists, New Agers, and Freemasons were saying. So, is it 100% absolute debunking them into question? Well, I guess it's just a matter of belief and opinion at that point, because, I don't know. If Christianity is a part of the mysteries and all the other religions are part of the mysteries, then I really don't know where we really we could place our hope in, really. I don't know, but maybe I'm just looking at it wrong. I mean, I can't really trust it. But whatever conclusion you want to draw is fine, I guess. But anyways, I'll be continuing with that. Thank you for listening, whoever that is, and have a good night.